With 51 options for subsume abilities, it certainly can be tough to discern the broken abilities from all the trash. I know we struggled greatly, even more than when deciding the top 5 Warframes. It was so difficult we had to make this as a top 10 instead of a top 5, and even then it was a struggle, but I do believe that we have the perfect list for you. At number 10, we have Reeve. This ability goes under the nose of the majority of the player base. Whatever, you dash forward, useless power. No, this ability deals a percentage of the enemy's health, and with 350% ability strength, this deals about 33% of the enemy's health, so about 1/3 of the total health and shields of the enemy. And remember, viral causes enemies to take more damage to their health, stacking up to 325%. So 33% multiplied by 325% is 107% of the enemy's health. This ability will one-shot a level 1 heavy gunner, but it will also one-shot a level 9999 heavy gunner. It doesn't matter, this ability is broken for endless survival. And for number 9, we have Shooting Gallery. Really, bro? Shooting Gallery? With all these amazing abilities in here, you put Shooting Gallery as number 9. How can you sleep at night? With the power of Muscle Flash. This augment is actually broken. It was clearly not meant to be used on anyone other than Mesa, and yet here we are. With a build running 200% ability range, that is an insane 24 meters blind that happens every 6 kills, so all the time. As long as you're shooting, you will be spamming out blinds every few seconds. Other than stunning the enemies, this also makes them vulnerable to stealth multipliers, which is a, let's see, 700% melee damage increase. Number 8 is Dispensary. I don't think I need to explain why Dispensary is here, but I'll do it regardless, this is my video. Running this in conjunction with Equilibrium is basically cheating. A single Dispensary will pump out more than 1000 energy in a minute. It is also the best tool for handling Railjack. Yes, I think Lavas with his no cooldown strat is grossly overrated. Furthermore, it is also going to be your go-to for leveling your arc guns, as the ammunition is universal. I mean, the main thing I really should explain is why isn't this any higher on the list? And that's simply because as you progress through the game and get better and better gear, energy also becomes less and less of a concern. Early on, this is a godsend, but as you get Arcane Energize or Emergence Dissipate or just some of the energy pizza discs, energy stops being a concern on most builds. Bit my tongue. Coming in at number 7, Terrify. I have to ask, serious question you guys, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to do to prove my dedication? This ability has been reworked in, let's say, recent time, and now it's better than ever before. It has an incredible 60% armor strip at base, meaning that in order to strip 100% armor, you will only need 170% ability strength. And keep in mind, that is not even the primary purpose of this ability. It's actually a CC. It causes the enemies to run away from you, and when the enemies are running away from you, they can't shoot you, causing you to take significantly less damage. The main downside to this ability is that it has a very annoying enemy cap, unlike most other CC abilities. However, at 170% ability strength that you will need anyways in order to strip 100% armor, you will be able to affect 33 enemies, which is most of the time going to be enough. This is just a solid choice for any non-melee build. For number 6, we have the Resignator. This is one of those abilities that when played on the Warframe on which it originated, and in this case we're of course talking about Octavia, it's actually quite terrible. This is largely due to the fact that Octavia is invisible all the time anyways, and she doesn't care about taunting the enemies. And as a matter of fact, having the Resignator moving your hammer around makes it much more likely that you will catch a stray bullet and die. However, when played on other Warframes that tend to, take damage, this is so powerful, it literally turns off the enemy's AI. Sometimes they will shoot at it, but most of the time they'll just be running around chasing this ball and otherwise doing nothing. So it's almost like having an aura of Terrify around you that causes all enemies to literally stop attacking. It is as powerful as it sounds, but the reason why it isn't any higher on the list is because of the Eximus changes, which means that at least some enemies will still be attacking you. For number 5, we have both Roar and Eclipse. Yes, I went ahead and I put both of them in the same tier, but do hear me out. These are good for completely different purposes, but at the same time, they're both used on weapon platform frames. So Eclipse is used on build that goes for blunt damage, as it is such a powerful multi-plegative buff. On the other hand, if you want to play a build that focuses around status effects, specifically bleed, you would want to use Roar, as that is considered as a faction buff, which double dips with the damage over time effect. People always ask me which one is better, but it really does depend upon which kind of build you're playing. As a rule of thumb, if you're playing a status build, use Roar. If you're playing a crit build, use Eclipse. For number 4, we have Breed's Surge. Now we're getting into the big bads of the Helminth system. Now, exactly where to begin with this ability? Well, first off, it's a blind. We already discussed just how powerful blinds are in this game. Other than being an incredibly useful CC, it also opens up enemies to the stealth damage multiplier. But because this is Breed's Surge, it also causes enemies affected by it to take more damage in general. And on top of that, it also sends out these sparks that, well, you've seen what these sparks does to enemies. I don't really have much to say about this ability, it's just bonkers broken, and it's amazing to have access to it on all Warframes. So, coming in at number 3, we have Gloom. Here is the ability you probably expected to be on top. Well, why isn't it number 1? Well, first off, let's talk about what this even does. Gloom is an area around you that manages to accomplish 2 different things at once. First off, it allows you to heal from the damage dealt, both from your abilities and from your weapons. However, lingering effects such as bleed does not count, and that goes for abilities as well. But any direct source of damage will heal you, and that is something that is unique to this ability. On top of that, enemies inside of the area of Gloom will be slowed by 95%. Being slowed by 95% that basically means that you're stunned and completely unable to move, which is just so powerful, especially because it actually stacks with cold. So, you know, spreading cold at the same time means that enemies will not move. Okay, but let's discuss why this is not number 1. I know that a lot of prominent Warframe YouTubers in the past have declared this as being the best subsume in the game, and around the time where they did that, I think I would have agreed with them. So the reason why I changed my mind is because, well, we have the Eximus changes, and as you progress into an endless mission, you're going to see a ton of Eximus units, which is a lot of enemies, which is going to simply ignore the slow of Gloom, which is where, let's be real, the majority of the value of Gloom comes from. So it becomes progressively less useful as you get further into your endless mission. And another reason why it isn't any higher on the list anymore is because of some changes that happened to make other abilities better, which is now higher up on the list, which we'll get to in a moment, so let's continue. So the second spot actually goes to Ensnare. I've had a, let's say, rather difficult time justifying why I would put Ensnare above Gloom, and that is in spite of the fact that I find myself subsuming Ensnare onto my Warframes much more commonly than Gloom. I think the main reason why I believe Ensnare is better is because one of the main downsides to Gloom is that it is not nearly as strong on shield gating frames as it used to be. It now has to derive a lot of value from the healing itself, and on health tanks that actually uses health to stay alive, it's great, but on frames like Banshee, who use this as one of their main tower ability tools, after the Eximus changes, it's basically useless on them. And also, sometimes you don't want to slow down the enemies because that can cause you to lose a lot of effectiveness in terms of being able to kill those enemies. And that's actually the main reason why Ensnare is so powerful. It's a really strong grouping tool that just allows you to get all the enemies in one spot and then blow them up. I actually think that Ensnare is so good that I would use it on Nidus, which already has one of the best grouping tools in the game. I would literally subsume over lava with Ensnare. I think it's that good. But before we get to the number 1 best subsumability, I have to give some glory to these tech options. Thermal Sunder. This ability is perfect for dealing with low-level trash, and since it can be subsumed onto, let's say, quite fast Warframes, it is brilliant for the purpose of opening relics, especially up to Neo tier. I don't know if much needs to be said about this ability. It's not good for any other purpose in the game, maybe for leveling Warframes, but I still prefer my 3-minute leveling technique. Radial Blind. It's still a giant blind, but of course it is beat by Breed Search in almost every single last case. This is however a bit easier to get your hands on. Firewalker. The only reason why I have this ability here is because it grants status immunity to you and your team, and especially with the slam attack you can go ahead and give yourself and your team a little bit of a safe haven. Then we have the ability that makes me also happy that I know how to read the phonetic alphabet, because otherwise I am almost certain that I would pronounce this perspicacity. It is in fact called perspicacity, and by the way, this is the guy who can pronounce perspicacity but can't say cold properly for some damn reason. This is obviously a super nice ability, but you should be using this on Wukong whenever you want to do a spy mission, but not for anything else. Expedited Suffering. Disruption. Sata's Whisper. This is obviously a great ability for having more damage on your weapons, but really in most cases you would want to use Eclipse or Roar instead. Sentient Wrath. This is such an incredible crowd control ability. It's just unfortunate that abilities that solely focuses on crowd control is so terrible in the meta that we're having right now. Which is why it's such a mystery to me why they made the Eximus units immune to the weakest utility in the game, that being crowd control. Elemental Ward. This ability has a little bit of everything. Status chance, damage, armor, extra health, whatever you need. It is especially effective at allowing Warframes that has almost enough damage reduction to be health tanks to actually play that role. Mark of Death. This is, in its own right, a very powerful ability in the sense that it basically allows any single target weapon to become an AoE weapon instead. The main drawback is that the damage is dealt twice, first to the enemy that you attack, and then Mark of Death will deal the damage to all enemies around it, meaning that you basically have to go through armor twice. So either play this against Corvus or just get ready to strip a lot of armor. Nourish. Look at all these useful buffs. If you already have a full team with 1 or 2 supports and the other support has already picked one of the more, let's say, prevalent support abilities such as Pillage, you probably would want to bring Nourish. I think it is quite viable. Just look at the increased energy, and that is a multiplicative effect on all energy gain and energy regen effects. And then ultimately at number 1 we have Pillage. This is the absolute best ability in the game, at least for subsumability, that is. Pillage almost feels like multiple abilities that is cast at once. It's a survivability tool, but it is also a utility tool at the same time. It will in most cases restore your shields to full, while at the same time cleansing you and your allies of any status effects. Now, I said earlier that status immunity is really hard to come by. Obviously, this is only partial immunity to status effect, as it only works for the duration of the ability, but anything is better than nothing. The main thing, however, that makes Pillage so great is the ability to strip armor. I mean, it's a giant ring, and I mean giant, especially if you build a little bit of duration on it. It can just cover the entire tile. While this ability has always been great, you would usually build it for either utility or for survivability. You see, if you were able to reach 400% ability strength, then you would be able to strip 100% armor right away. And this is still true, but before the Veilbreaker update, most abilities, this one included, would strip from the current armor instead of the total armor of the enemies. If you had 200% ability strength and you cast Pillage 4 times, the enemies would still have more than 10% armor left. With these changes, casting Pillage with 200 ability strength twice will cause it to remove 100% of the enemy's armor, which is a massive buff. I firmly believe that this sets it apart from the other subsume abilities. But now that you know which abilities to subsume onto your favorite Warframes, it is time to get out there and commit some more genocide, I guess. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.